In this lesson, we're going to look at some volume editing. First off, we need to import some audio. So we're going to press import, then find some audio that we can use.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
Now, if I wanted to do a little fade in on that, I can just zoom in here, drag here to fade in. For zooming, I'm just holding Command and using the mouse scroll wheel. If you're on a Windows machine, you just hold Control. Every time I do say Command on Windows, just think Control and you're 9 out of 10 times, you're just going to be fine. I'm going to do a little fade here. So now I've done a fade in and a fade out. And what the fade does is it goes from taking the volume from all the way to the top, from the top here, and then fading it out to 0, like this.
They were kids in the city of Utrecht.
You can hear it fades out. Let's do a longer one.
These sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
Obviously, I do not want to fade out while he's speaking, but I do want to fade out this little end bit here so it doesn't just end abruptly.
City of Utrecht.
So it's got a nice finish to it. Another way of zooming, by the way, if you have selected a region, as we did previously, you just click on it to select it and then press H. Then you'll zoom in to that region. We can adjust the levels by dragging up and down here on the gain. It will snap to the ideal level. If you're not too sure about if you've set the levels correctly, another way of doing it is just having it selected, going up to Tools, Auto Level, and then Hindenburg will reanalyze it. So that's another way of setting the level. Just let us do it for you. Now we want to try something a bit more complicated. We want to add a different track. Again, we just drag and drop the music in. The levels will automatically be set. Let's just move this out of the way for the time being. So now we're just going to listen to the music and figure out where we want this piece of narration to go in. So this is where they start singing, so I definitely don't want it to be on top of that because that just sounds horrible.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of...
You never want to do that. Having someone singing underneath your narration is just going to confuse matters. So don't do that. Let's put it here where there was no singing. But I do want it to end just before he starts singing. So at this beat right here. For scrubbing, I'm using the JKL scrub. Now I can just move this into place. I can hold down Command and right arrow just to put this right where I want it, like that. So if I play it back now.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
That's absolutely brilliant. It's right where I wanted it. But there is a small problem. It's a little bit hot, which means it's a little bit too loud. The music is too loud underneath the narration here. It's disturbing. And I want to have the music go down a little bit. Now if I dragged everything down, well, that would work right here.
Creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
Yeah, that's just fine. Problem then being the music is not loud enough when we get to this bit. So what I want to do instead is make what we call a duck. I want to duck the music down underneath this little piece of narration. And the way to do that is to drag a selection. Remember when I said you can drag if you're at the bottom half of the region. So I'm dragging a selection in the music. Now if I go to the top line of the music here, press on it, drag down, see what happens? I'm creating a duck. So now the music's going to play nicely up here. It's going to go down with a little fade, stay down underneath the narration, come up again, and the music will play. Now let's see if that actually works. So I'm just going to press escape to remove all my markers and all my selections. I'm just going to move my playhead. I could do that actually just by pressing P. P means pre-roll. If I press P now, it's going to jump back 3 seconds. You can set that if you like. And then it's going to play from there. So P.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
That sounds much better. If I just try that one more time, I can actually adjust it in real time.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
This is a duck. Now, another feature that we use a lot when we're doing radio is something called a sound bed. That is typically used when we are working with, not with music, but with ambience. I've got 4 different pieces following one another. Now it's going to sound a little bit like a radio piece.
In the city of Utrecht.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours.
So we have some narration, some interview, some narration, interview. But let's imagine for a second that we did this outside a church and we want the church bells to open the segment. This is a very typical way of doing a piece of radio. We find the church bells.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
We used to go skateboarding, and then
Church bells working fine at the beginning, but somewhat too loud as we get into the story. So I want them to be at full volume here in the beginning, but then go down. But I want them to lie underneath some of the rest of the segment. I'm not quite sure how much yet, but let's just try it out. Now, the way to do that is to create a sound bed. What we did before was we created a duck. Just dragging a selection and ducking it like that. But that's not really going to work for me this time around because I want it to go down and stay down. So what I can do instead is just drag a really small selection, and this is the length of my fade. Now, if I drag outside that selection, not inside, outside the selection, drag down like so, see what happens. It's going to make a fade, the length of the selection, and the volume is now going to stay down until I do something else. So it's going to sound like this.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids.
I can adjust this in real time. So let me just try to do that.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
we used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours pressing pause.
We can combine these things. If I wanted it to go even further down, but only underneath this interview here, I could drag a selection and do a duck like that. Or I could, when we get to here, again do a sound bed, just drag down like that. Just on a split there, just going to get rid of that. So as you can see, we can do some quite elaborate volume adjustments just by using duck, sound bed, and a fade. Here we have all kinds of tracks. It's really complex mix here, and it's all done with the 3 things that you just saw before. The fade, doing a sound bed, and a fade, sound bed, fade, that kind of thing. So you can do some really complex things just with these 3 tools.